Hey, happy Monday. I am excited to be here with you today because I have something I think, really profound for me that I want to share. First off, I want to say happy Monday. I want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up on a Monday morning. Um, I like to start off the week really strong because I think beginnings and a good foundation is really important to really set the tone for the rest of your day, the rest of your week, the rest of your month, year, life. To be honest, so I think it's really important to set the tone, and I believe in strong beginnings. And hopefully, I can give you something, a little bit of something to motivate you, to inspire you to take action, because action is what actually moves us forward, right? Um, I was actually on a I was actually on a call with I thought was really profound, and I wanted to share it with you today, real quick. And I just want to say, let's have a culture of in this crazy culture we live in, this competitive culture, right? Competition can be good, but let's have a culture of progress instead of a culture of perfection. And I think that's one of the things, especially in real estate, is one of the things that we lose sight of is progress is what we're really after. It took me the longest time to finally realize what that phrase means. The longest time to finally realize what that phrase means, that it's not the destination that matters, it's the journey. And so it's the progress that it makes things really meaningful in our life. That's what's meaningful. Because have you ever had a goal that you were working toward, and then you finally hit the goal, and then you went, now what? Right? So I just want to encourage you today to think of everything you're doing as progress. Think of things that will move the needle, instead of just trying to focus on one particular thing. Now, obviously, you have to have goals. We have to have things that move us forward. So I'm not knocking goals. I'm all about having really clear, defined goals. But what I want to encourage you today is do something to make progress today, and don't beat yourself up. So anyway, that was a really long introduction, but what I want to talk about is something that gets a little bit, I think people get a little confused on, a lot of times. So I'm sure you've heard the definition of insanity, right? It's doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. But we've also heard that you have to be consistent to achieve really anything meaningful or lasting, right? And you get any lasting results. In fact, the word consistency, or doing, doing the same thing over and over, that process, that concept is what will lead to really massive breakthroughs in your life. So when you look at the two, it's like, so you've got insanity, doing the same thing over and over, consistency, doing the same thing over and over. So what's the difference, right? What's the difference between insanity and consistency? And I know, this is kind of tongue in cheek. I know it's kind of uh, a a, a humorous question, but the point that I'm trying to get across is sometimes there's a fine line that we got to walk down, right? So what really is the difference between consistency and insanity? Well, ultimately, it comes down to really one really important thing, and that's intention. It's the difference between having this strategic approach, where taking these actions over and over, they're a part of a plan, so that you can achieve a very specific outcome, so you can get to a very specific goal. And I know I started this talking about making progress, but consistency is what builds that progress. It's what builds the steps toward that goal. But here's the difference. So consistency is about having an action, about having a goal and having an action plan, and insanity is really just about being stuck in a pattern with no direction. It's just chaos, right? So you're doing this same thing over and over, trying to get different results, but you don't really have a goal in mind. You don't really have a plan in mind. My coach, like the one I was talking about, says that in order to get really true success, you do have to keep rowing that boat. The boat that you're in, you have to keep rowing it. But you also have to be in the right boat rowing in the right direction. So if you're just rowing and rowing and rowing and you're killing yourself trying to get to that destination, trying to get where you want to go, but you're in the wrong boat going the wrong direction, then you're never going to get there. So you have to have that strategy, right? Strategy is important. So you have to have a direction. You have to be in the right boat. I like to think of it as like fishing in the desert, right? You can have the best fishing gear. You can have this just burning desire to catch a fish, but if you're casting your line out in the sand, in the dirt or the sand, you're never going to catch anything. So remember, consistency it's about having the right strategy, but it's about perseverance and dedication towards that goal and understanding that in order to get to that success, in order to get to that goal, it's going to require some really constant action. It's going to take some sustained effort over, a period of time, whatever that looks like. It depends on what the goal is. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish, right? I'll give you an example. So when I started each one of my 3 different businesses, in order to really get anything off the ground, in order to get any kind of headway, I had to do these certain things over and over with consistency before I ever saw any results. And I know most of the people watching this are in real estate, and you guys, that you have to do these things consistently over time. Whether it's making the calls, or whether it's door knocking, or whether it's doing the open houses or social media marketing, whatever it is, you have to do these certain actions over and over. You have to have consistency. So I marketed for my business for months before I got any traction, before I got anything. So we have to build these patterns. We have to have this plan. I can give you an example in my health as well. So I lost almost 100 pounds in the last 2 years, and I kept it off. But when I first started my workout program, when I first had this goal in mind, it took almost 4 months. I'm not kidding. It took almost 4 months to actually start losing weight. In fact, when I first started the program, when I first started everything off, I actually gained weight. I gained weight at the beginning of this, and that was pretty I'm losing track of the word. It was very it made me feel really down. It made me feel really disappointed. I don't know why I couldn't think of that word. I was very disappointed that I started to gain weight. It's like, what the heck is going on? But sometimes when we start a process, you're going to get this slump, and before you really start to get momentum, and that's how consistency works. But I stayed consistent. I stuck to it, and it led me to being honestly healthier than I've probably ever been in my life. Now, I'm not saying that to brag. I'm not saying that to say, man, I lost 100 pounds. Look at me. I'm saying it because I stayed consistent, and I followed 3 really keys to intentional consistency that works. So I'm telling you this because I've followed these rules. I've followed the consistency, and it works. You can get results. So like I said, there's 3 keys to really effective and intentional consistency. So number 1, we've already really talked about a little bit. You got to have a clear goal. This goal, it's like your guiding star. It's like your compass. You got to know exactly what you want to achieve before you can get anywhere. It provides this focus. It provides this motivation, and it helps you really prioritize actions and the resources so that you're not wasting, time and resources on all these different things and just throwing stuff at the wall, right? Here's the thing. Most people don't actually know what they want. That's actually the hardest question for people to answer. Whenever I'm working with someone and I ask them, what do you want? What is the goal that you want to get out of this? It's the hardest question for them to answer is, what do you want? And all of us can be like that when we first start out. So you got to have a clear goal. You got to have, it's like did you ever play that game when you were growing up, Pin the Tail on the Donkey, where there's a picture of a donkey and you got a tail with like a thumbtack or something, or a push pin or whatever you want to call it. And you have to, then they blindfold you and you get spun around, and you have to go and you have to pin the tail on the donkey, right? You have to find where the tail is going to go on the donkey. And sometimes it ends up, on the opposite wall. Sometimes it ends up in the table. Sometimes it ends up, whatever. It's all over the place. And it's this comical game. But isn't that basically what most of us are doing with our goals? Is we're just kind of blindly stabbing at things until it sticks. So you got to have a real goal. The second part is you have to have a plan to actually get there. So your plan is like your roadmap. It really outlines the steps that you have to take to really stay organized and disciplined. A really good plan, it makes it so that your efforts and everything that you do are really aligned with your goal. You have to have that map. If I live in Florida, so if I jumped in my car and just started driving west, just generally in a west direction, what are the chances that I would actually end up exactly in LA eventually? Probably pretty low. And God forbid I start driving east, right? So, but if I had a map, or I had even better, I had a GPS with the step-by-step instructions on how to go from Orlando, where I live, to LA. There's a pretty good chance I'm going to get there without a whole lot of hiccups, without a whole lot of delays, because I have a map and I have a step-by-step instructions on how to actually get there. And most people, they don't spend the time to actually build a map, to build step-by-step on how to get to where they want to go and do that consistently. So you have to have at least some sort of strategy. Most people are just going to throw spaghetti at the wall till something sticks, right? The other thing to remember when you're building a plan, when you're creating a plan for wherever you want to get to your goal, is model proven practices. I've talked about this probably 1,000 times, but model proven practices. Find someone that helps you build that plan or bridge that gap. And someone that's been there, someone that's been in business, someone that has gone through some of the struggles, someone that knows what it's like and has had some experience. And that's one of the reasons that I believe in coaching so much. I'm a coach myself, but I also have coaches. I have people that coach me because I want the accountability, and I want the knowledge, and I want the game plan and the map to get to where I want to go. We all have our own journey. And that's why, like I said, that's why coaching is so powerful, because it gives you a way to actively and interactively, I guess, really implement those strategies and that step-by-step process in real time. So it's really powerful. And if you're interested in me helping you to bridge that gap from where you are to where you want to go, there's a link in my bio. It just says discovery session. Click the link in there and let's set up something so that can help you get to where you want to go, so that I can help you model some proven practices. I can help you get there. So anyway, the second one. Man, I'm getting all mixed up today. That's the second one, is you have to have a plan. And then the third one, now we're on to 3. The third one is you got to be able to evaluate regularly and be prepared to pivot or to adjust. This is about flexibility. It's about learning. But you have to evaluate it regularly. You have to do it on a consistent basis to really see where you're at, assess the progress, and really be able to identify areas for improvement. And I would say that's one of the biggest differences between insanity and consistency, is that your insanity, you're doing the same thing over and over, same thing. You're not making any adjustments. With consistency, yes, you're doing the same types of things over and over, but you're making micro adjustments. You're making a little adjustment here. You're making, my email open rates get anywhere from 30 to 50% open rates. And I'm not bragging. All I'm saying is it's taken me a while to get there. I used to have like 2%, but I just kept tweaking the emails, and I just kept tweaking and keep changing a little bit till my message started to resonate. Now I get a pretty good open rate. And so I just adjust. I just pivot a little bit. So being prepared to adjust really makes it to where you can keep on that path, because what's going to happen is there's going to be things that are, it's life, right? Things are going to come up. Things are going to get thrown at you. So it helps you to be able to adjust. But I want to encourage you, don't be too rigid on things. I think that's one of the, like I said, the main differences is between consistency and insanity. The second thing on that is that you have to have the ability, but you also have to have the willingness to adapt and to change as you need to. A lot of times they have the capabilities to adapt. They have the skills to adapt, but they don't have the willingness. They don't have that drive to actually make it happen. And that's one of the reasons that a compelling future is so important, is you have to have that drive. You have to have that willingness. So here's the thing. I know that was a lot to throw on you. And if you want some clarity, email me or just schedule a discovery session or reach out to me. My email is thementorsofminds@gmail.com. But what I want to say is it's okay. Sometimes consistency and insanity can kind of feel like the same thing, especially when you're not getting the results that you really thought you would. But the biggest reward that you get from consistency is you build character and you build integrity. When you actually follow through on something consistently, you build an identity as someone who really keeps their word to yourself. And honestly, the worst person that you can lie to is yourself. Because when you go back on your word, or you don't stay consistent, you don't follow through on that consistent basis, you're telling your subconscious, I'm not someone that's trustworthy, and eventually you're going to start to slip. Eventually, let's say you're doing a workout, workout routine, eventually you're going to go, you know what, I can crunch that down into 20 minutes. Now I'm only doing 10 minutes. And then eventually you start skipping days, whatever the case is. But when you keep your word to yourself, you build an identity and you build character. And it's really important to stay consistent. So I want to challenge you this week. Pick an activity or a goal, whatever it is. Set a really definite, clear goal. Whatever you have to do, write down. Just brainstorm all the ideas you can think of. Create a plan to actually get there. Create those step-by-step actions to actually get there. Now, it doesn't need to be perfect. Just create the plan, and then be prepared to pivot. Be prepared to adjust as things start to come. So thank you for being here. I want to say one more thing. Consistency creates habits. Habits create a lifestyle, and a lifestyle creates your identity and your legacy. Thank you for being here. Thanks for joining me on a Monday. If you're watching this later, thank you for watching. And again, if you want some help getting from where you're at to where you want to be, if you want help setting those goals, if you want help creating that plan, and you want help to be able to pivot, to be able to have that accountability, click the link in my bio. Let's set something up, and I'd love to help you bridge that gap. So happy Monday, and I'll see you soon.